All right. Hello, Electric Sunshine Cult. My name is Dejis. I have been a producer for about 10 years, and I like to make a lot of dubstep and whatnot. I'm going to break down a song today from an EP I have coming up. The song is called Moonwalk, and it goes through a few different genres. It's pretty heavy on my CPU right now because my computer is just not great. So I'll probably just go through some sections and I'll probably just do the basses itself isolated instead of with the full song, um, just to kind of show off the sound design. But begins with a very big atmospheric intro. So yeah, I ended up doing kind of a reggae thing. I don't really know what inspired me to do that, but this intro synth is something called Sync Varier. I don't really know how to pronounce it. It's spelled odd, but it's from Noise Engineering. They have a lot of great free plugins. Their effects plugins are sweet. Definitely go check them out. And then the guitar here is just Flex. Um, it's just one of their patches with a very quick slapback delay. And I use the strum function to mimic upward strumming, which is how reggae guitar is like traditionally played. It gives it kind of a different timbre it by hitting the top notes first. So I just kind of wanted to mimic that. And I'm going to go into the bass sounds here. So a lot of these are all Citrus. Citrus is Image Line's version of FM8, pretty much. Walking on the moon. So we'll see what's going on here. So Citrus has an FM matrix and also an RM matrix, which is ring modulation. I won't go into the science right now and the math, but yeah, everything's routed to this X mod here. It's all routed to the X mod, which is really just acting as a volume envelope for this one, I believe. It's it brings in the second operator a little bit, but and then really a lot of the sound comes from the ring modulation though. Pretty cool. Second bass, no ring modulation, just one operator FMing the first one and then another one operating the second operator. So kind of some serial FMing. And then Citrus has 3 filters built in too, which can all be routed to the Mod X. So you can really get creative with it and make some very cool sounds. And these are fairly simple patches. There's a little filtering on this one. And all these are just getting routed to a bus that has a bunch of saturators in parallel, commonly known as a fat rack. And they're all just doing a little bit of compression or a little bit of saturation. And this is really just to kind of enrich the harmonic content a lot. And I use a bunch of different ones to just to get all the different tones and sonic information that they can create. And that really goes a long way. It helps fill out the sounds a lot. So instead of just boosting your audio to hell, you can just saturate it a lot and get very nice results. Here, just another citrus patch, but I did something interesting with the automation. If you go into the editor, so you can make a pattern, but you can also turn on the LFO, which will modulate the pattern and give you very interesting LFO shapes. Pretty cool. This guy down here is just I put a bass I made into Fruity Granulizer and messed around with it. I don't have the original patch. I must have deleted it. But Granulizer is a really fun way to get some pretty interesting sounds. Moving on to the next drop here. I have a lot of these digital sounds. Which is really, it's just more citrus. And I just went insane with the frequency modulation. So I put the first operator all the way like 4 octaves down, and then just boosted the second one to insane levels. So it's very high up, and it creates very interesting aliasing. And when you play very high notes with it, you can get a lot of interesting sounds and tones. I did a lot of that for the second part here, which I also frequency shifted to put the tones into more desirable places. And I layered this with some vital patches. My computer's just not having it right now. It wasn't running this bad earlier. But yeah, really cool trick with FM synths. That'll work with Serum too, or anything that can FM synth really. Just turn off oversampling. Otherwise, it's going to get rid of all that cool aliasing that you're going after. Just very simple Vital patches. I love Vital because it has great wavetable modulations that are just more unique than Serum's. Serum has quite a few selections, but they more or less sound the same to me, and I don't really care for it. And this has 2 different sections where you can further modulate the wavetable with like sync, informant, quantize, bend, and just can lead to some really cool results. Very, very interesting sounds. And I'm going to jump ahead to the last drop here. So the last drop is a trap style drop. So I don't know if I showed, I think I showed the voice sample from before, which just
me up in space, I'll be walking on the moon. Catch me up in space. Catch me up in space, I'll be walking on the moon.
That's just, I recorded that myself and then pitched it down a little bit, but shifted the formants up, and it gives it some interesting texture when you do that. kind of like mimics vocal fry almost, which is pretty cool. So I took that and dropped it into SliceX. So SliceX chops up vocals pretty well. It detects the transients and creates cuts there. And you can also make your own markers and cut it up how you want. But it usually does a pretty good job at cutting it up well. And it'll dump it into the piano roll where you can just make patterns. And I messed with it quite a bit in Patcher here. So Patcher is nice because you can do all sorts of different routings instead of having everything be in serial. So I did one that's just some stereo enhancing to widen up the sound a bit. I did one dry one where I just EQ'd it a little bit. I did one where I added a little bit of OTT just to kind of parallel compress it and get out some of that sound I like from OTT, but I didn't want it to dominate it, so I just kind of dialed in a little bit of it until I liked where it was. And then the top layer here is Volcano 3, which is an EQ saturator. It sort of mimics old school saturation where when you boosted or took away stuff, you ended up getting some saturation, which often sounds very warm and nice. And this mimics that, and it's a very cool saturator. And then I just shifted down the formants a little bit to kind of soften it up. And yeah, I put that all together. So that's pretty much that. And for my routing, like I have all my basses going to here into like the fat rack, a little bit of soothe to kind of tame some harsh frequencies. Soothe is nice because you kind of just, it's one of those set it and forget it plugins, and it can really help out a lot. Just be careful because if you overdo it, it can take away the tone that you might like from your sounds. 2 different subs. I did a separate sub for the trap one because I wanted a bit of a cleaner sound. That's all routed into the mid sub bus, where I'm just doing a little bit of multi-band compression. And then it all just goes to the master or the pre-master, where I do a tiny bit of EQ. I usually take out around 2K because it's very that's where the human ear is the most sensitive. So those frequencies tend to be very harsh. And probably like the real sauce here is this mid-side separation. So I can take my side here and I just take out some of the top end where it can get very harsh, but I boost it up like 6 dB here because it makes the sound very full and wide. And this helps with like translating across different listening systems. You know, like on a phone, it's like, okay, this seems really balanced, but now I listen to my headphones and it just doesn't seem very full. Boosting your sides can help with that because phones play in mono, but you know most other systems will play in stereo. So that helps a lot with translating across systems. And by doing like all this bussing, I tend to not need to do much for my mastering. I usually just throw on Ozone 9 Maximizer and just use a little bit to kind of glue it together, not very much. And I usually end up around like -5, -4 LUFS. Sometimes hit like -3 at parts if there's a lot of sonic information going on. But yeah, so that's all I really got. Thank you guys for checking this out. I'm glad to be a part of this, and I really hope that you like this.